Representative Kilmartin, one of your opponents here suggests, Mr. Kilmartin, that you're nothing more than a tool of the Democratic Party for the party to control the office of Attorney General. Are you a tool of the Democratic Party?
Absolutely not. I've always maintained my independence, and I think the best way I can demonstrate that is what I did as a police officer. In 1984, I raised my right hand to swore to enforce the law without fear or favor. I've arrested friends that I went to school with. I've put colleagues that I rode in a cruiser with into the court system because they violated the law. That's what I did as an independent police officer. That's what I'll do as the independent Attorney General. I have a record that says I have the strength and the power to be independent, to prosecute when people break the law. That's what the people are looking for in an Attorney General, someone with the experience. Unfortunately, this job, it's a political job where you are running for it in a political system. But once you get there, I will do what I did in 1984. I'll raise my right hand and enforce the law without fear or favor. I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Mr. Rainville.
Well, I don't know if Peter just made an announcement that he's running as an independent for Attorney General, because it sounds like that's what he said. What people need to know is that I'm the only candidate from day one who said that this office needs to be independent. You hear a lot of people talking about it now because they know that my message is clear and correct. Everyone that I speak to across this state, when I tell them I'm running for Attorney General as an independent, they're saying that's the way we need to have that office now. Mr. Kilmartin cannot and will not do that as a 20-year member of the General Assembly and the Democratic leadership. I'm the only person that can do that.
Mr. Little.
Mr. Kilmartin, you accepted approximately $30,000 from orthopedists over the years. In return, you sponsored a bill to give them the right to have MRIs in their office. You received $1,500 for Cavanta, and for that you introduced a bill putting an incinerator in the resource recovery and calling it renewable energy. You've received money from lobbyists for every group that you're going to be on the other side of the table as Attorney General if you're elected. Verizon, Blue Cross, Tufts, tens of thousands of dollars, and you say, trust me.
Thanks, Mr. Little. Mr. McKenna.
In 2004, the people of the state of Rhode Island passed separation of powers. Ever since then, the General Assembly have subverted that. We have the issue of legislative grants. That's a constitutional violation. I would sue the General Assembly for violating the Constitution. They took over the Ethics Commission. I would sue them for that. You can't trust the General Assembly to enforce the will of the people, which is the state constitution. That's why you need somebody who knows what they're doing, who can recognize the issues, and can make a difference.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wallen.
Representative Kilmartin is part of the problem, not the solution. He's a powerful political insider who spent 20 years in the General Assembly. We've already had an Attorney General who's been a powerful political insider. A person so blind to the fact that he was being influenced that he couldn't separate himself from the Central Falls public corruption investigation. I never heard once Representative Kilmartin ever criticize Attorney General for not withdrawing and recusing himself from the Central Falls investigation, despite the fact that Colonel Doherty ultimately took it.
Thanks, Mr. Walling. You just heard what your colleagues had to say, Mr. Kilmartin.
Well, as I say, talk is cheap. Number one, what they're trying to do is present the case to the people without giving all the evidence. I'm a leader on healthcare issues. I'm trying to create a level playing field in the healthcare industry. I'm a leader on environmental issues. I did the first bill to provide tax breaks for alternatively fueled vehicles. He says I'm in the pocket of all these groups. But Mr. Little, prior to his announcing for Attorney General, had on his website all the corporations he lists. He represents Lifespan, Rhode Island Hospital, Chase Manhattan Bank, Viacom,
Thank you.
Sony,
Thanks,
National
Mr.
Grid.
Thanks, Mr. Kilmartin. We'll stop there. You can go back to it if you'd like. Arlene Violet, a question for Mr. Rainville,
yes,
please.
and all you gentlemen. This is a question on how you envision your role. As you know, there's a lot of debates on illegal immigrants. Number one, would you cooperate with ICE? Number two, you are the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state of Rhode Island. As you know, in Providence, there's some reluctance to enforce the immigration laws and cooperate. Would you, as Attorney General, Chief Law Enforcement Officer, exert your muscle to bring Providence into line relative to prosecuting these kinds of cases. And as you know, Providence's excuse was, well, we want people who witness crimes to come forward if they're illegal, and we don't want to prosecute them because they'll be deported. Can you think of a way, Mr. Rainville and others, on how you would, in fact, handle that conundrum of protecting a witness and the deportation issue?
Mr. Rainville.
Absolutely. I do believe, obviously, the immigration issue is a federal issue, though, and I think it's more of a border issue that Rhode Island, fortunately, doesn't have to deal with. But as far as the issue is when an immigrant or someone from the Hispanic community or any other community comes here and feels that they are a victim of a crime or they have information about a crime, I want them to know that they can come to Attorney General Rainville's office because we want to make sure that we have the proper information to prosecute those crimes, so we have the evidence. If we are given information that this person is illegal, then we will take the necessary steps to talk with the federal authorities to see what we'll do about that. But I want everyone to know in the state of Rhode Island, in the immigrant or Latino Hispanic community, that they're safe to come to Attorney General's office
And
to give
as
them
far as
information.
Providence is concerned, would you insist they cooperate?
I would insist that I don't want the municipal officers working as federal agents. I do want them to cooperate, obviously, with the Attorney General's office, but I don't want any discrimination happening against anyone in this state.
Chris Little.
The role of the Attorney General is to see to it that local, state, and federal laws are enforced, and that includes the laws pertaining to immigration. So yes, I would work cooperatively with ICE, and if an illegal were in the course of a normal crime investigation were determined to have a problem with papers, that person should be referred to ICE, and I would be an advocate for that. That's the job of the Attorney General. I think one thing we do have to note is we also do have to keep in mind that sometimes this starts to become an area in which we go over the line and we start to infringe on civil rights.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. McKenna.
As the only practicing attorney here, I guess, who's handled these cases, if you're arrested and you don't have status and you're convicted, you will be automatically deported. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have a warning when we do two individuals when we do a settlement.
Well, actually, there'll be a deportation hearing.
Let's let him finish up.
Number one. Number two, I think immigrants need help. They're not the enemy, and I take umbrage at this notion of treating immigrants as if they're criminals. They're not. They're good people.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Mr. Wallen.
I've said from the beginning that I will be tough on immigration issues. I have a great concern about the fact that we have numerous illegal immigrants, not legal, but illegal immigrants coming to Rhode Island and putting a burden upon our social services as well as taking jobs from our citizens who are already here. So I'll defend the governor's executive order if the Obama administration decides to sue us. With regard to Providence, it's critical to have Providence, as well as all of our law enforcement community, cooperating with that executive order, and we need to pass legislation to make that happen.
Thanks, Mr. Wallen. Representative Kilmartin.
Thank you. First, let me say, after the Jennifer Rivera tragedy, I was honored with Sheldon Whitehouse to update the witness protection laws in this state to help further protect them. As Attorney General, I would sign the Secure Communities Initiative, which allows cooperation with ICE. If someone commits a crime, their fingerprints go to ICE, and we find out if they're in this country legally. What my colleagues here don't realize is law enforcement's already enforcing federal laws because we go into federal housing projects and we work and we enforce the law there. The other part of this is, in Providence, I've walked the main street where the legal immigrants are working.
We're going to hold it right there. Maybe we can get back to the topic. Jim Hummel, the Hummel Report. A question for Mr. Little, please.
Mr. Little, when anybody comes in, a large part of the Attorney General's job is administrative and making sure that your budget is met and the organization of the office itself. There are many longtime career prosecutors that we've seen there, Randy White, Patrick Youngs, Matt Dawson. I'm curious, as you go in, do you ask for everybody's resignation and start from fresh? And I've also heard people say, well, we want to fight corruption or we want to bolster this. The Attorney General's office doesn't have that many resources to begin with now. I'm sure they would like more. As you go in, specifically tell me, do you rob Peter to pay Paul? What is your organizational chart as you go in day one as Attorney General?
Mr. Hummel, I think the starting point is we do such things as performance audits and understand what is there. The AG's office is still doing many of its functions the way it's been doing them for 20 years, inadequate technology, a silo mentality as to how work is assigned, too much paper, too heavy, undue reliance on support staff. And because of the silo mentality, they are not able to marshal the forces depending upon what are the priorities that are being established. And instead, I think we're underutilizing our resources. You ask whether we are going to get rid of people who are there, and the answer is no. There are many fine people who are there. I think what we need to do is be changing the culture of the office and changing the leadership and understand the priorities that have been established by law, which is the whole array of duties of this office which are not being done and should be done, and we do have the resources to get them done.
Mr. McKenna.
I'm the only one of the Masters of Public Administration, and I'm the only one that ran the Attorney General's office in 1975 and 1976. And you do it by getting extra money from especially federal fundings, and you do it by your lawsuits. If we went after, for instance, the fraud on Wall Street, we can get legal fees to pay for that effort. If we wanted to computerize and digitize the entire law enforcement, we can get grants from the Department of Justice in Washington. In 1975 and 76, I got a grant to manage and schedule the scheduling of crime, and that was $1 million.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Mr. Wallen.
Having been the only candidate here as running for Attorney General who's been in the office within the last decade, I understand the commitment of the prosecutors make, and certainly those career prosecutors that you speak of, and which Jim mentioned, have been there throughout numerous administrations. Those are not the people whose positions are in jeopardy. But I will tell you that I will take a look from the top down, and those who have benefited from the political patronage of 12 years of the same party controlling the office are certainly going to be the first to go. And I mean that in terms of people who are not at the level of prosecutors doing the work of the people.
Thanks, Mr. Wallen. Representative Kilmartin.
Thank you. I was glad you asked that question to Chris Little first, because his press release when he was going to reorganize, I think he mentioned 120 or so attorneys in that office. He better check his math, because there's only about 95. So a good place to start would be his own research. The second part is I would do what I did in the Prosecution Bureau in Pawtucket. I would cross-train officers. I would make sure that if there were areas where, Lord forbid, a station nightclub fire came, you can move and reallocate your resources into that area without losing a step. The other thing I would do is to save resources.
I'll hold you there, Mr. Rainville.
Sure. Jim had mentioned several of the senior level prosecutors there, and I can tell you that there are two he didn't mention that are great longtime prosecutors. That's Bethany Mactaz and Stacy Pires-Veroni, which I believe that many of the senior level prosecutors there are doing a fantastic job. And I can tell you this, after speaking with many of them personally, there's also areas that they're not happy with that's happening in the office. There needs to be some change, and there needs to be some reorganization. I will speak with them again personally once I get in there during the transition phase, if I'm elected Attorney General, to see where we can change the areas of the office, and I certainly would do that.
Thank you, Mr. Rainville.